Happy Tuesday, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Doing great.
Feels like it's been a while since we've had everybody here.
I know.
Oh,
Has it been?
and you're about to leave us again.
It seems like it's been a bit.
Summer's not over yet, as you've reminded me.
That's right, Ms. Pumpkin Spice. Hey, this morning we're talking about something that's really trending. Everybody's talking about it across the country. Michael Oher, he was a Panthers player for a while. He's been around several teams. The guy behind, the inspiration behind the movie Blindsided, which won Oscars and things like that, now says the whole thing was basically a sham, for lack of a better term. Right. While yes, it did happen, it didn't really happen under the pretenses that Hollywood sort of portrayed it to be, unfortunately.
I read he didn't find out about the that it wasn't an adoption until February of this year.
It was a great movie, though. Typical Hollywood. Just made it spectacular. Everyone lived happily ever after. It was a beautiful experience, and then we find out maybe that's not reality.
I can't believe Sandra Bullock would do this.
I can't.
They
don't know.
Now she
They're just the actors.
No, I'm joking.
They handed her the script. She said, "Okay, I'm going to win an Oscar."
No, and she did a great job.
She did.
And that was the thing, because she was so comedy driven, and then she went over to this. But then, of course, once I saw the movie, I wanted to research it, and then research Michael Oher. And Michael Oher was not happy with the movie initially when it came out, saying that it was not factually based, that there were some fabrications. Typical Hollywood. Of course.
Movies always do that.
They made him look worse than I think he. Thought
his life, though, you read about his life, it was terrible. When he grew up in Memphis, just a horrible life. His mother, just a bad situation. Dad died in prison. Mother was a cocaine addict. So
you've got the details of what the controversy is all about.
Yeah, so we were talking about it earlier this morning, and if you're not familiar with the movie, so basically it centers around, again, former Panthers player Michael Oher. So he was adopted by this wealthy family, and yesterday, though, even though this has been like a real feel-good story for the past couple of decades
20 years,
Yes, that story changed yesterday. So this lawsuit that we're talking about is against the Tuohys, that's Sean and Leigh, and basically Michael Oher is accusing them of lying to him, and then those lies allegedly centered around the papers that the parents had him sign. So Oher says the papers that the Tuohys had him sign made them his conservators rather than adoptive parents. And so here's why it matters. So what a conservatorship is, it basically gave the Tuohys the authority to handle any of his money. So Oher says that the couple used it to make money off of him, and then he never got a cent of it. Attorneys say Oher, though, actually never signed adoption papers to begin with. So check this out.
Each year or every so often, conservators and conservatees like himself and the family would have to appear in court, talk to the judge. The judge would ask a series of questions. The judge would ask, is this conservatorship still appropriate? Is it still necessary? So it would be unlikely that he would reach the age of 37 and not some understanding that they had some control still over his life.
So this story originally broke last night. A lot of people have been weighing in ever since. Some saying, hey, it's Hollywood. You can't always believe what you see on TV. Others, though, they're wondering why decades later this is just now coming out. So we were breaking down what a conservatorship actually is. Basically, it's a type of guardianship. And then this can be for an adult or a minor. And people use this when they're not able to make their own decisions. So those decisions, they can be about money, they can be about literally anything. And depending on what's in the papers, the agreement can limit the conservator to very specific issues, or it can give them essentially the same rights that a parent would over a child. So this gets in the weeds really quickly, especially depending on how these papers and the agreements are typed up.
Yeah, and when people ask why is it being brought up decades later, which I asked the same thing, but from this article I read online, he thought there was an adoption, and it wasn't until February of 2023, this year, that he realized, oh, this wasn't officially an adoption, this was the conservatorship.
That comes up in front of a judge periodically. Why wouldn't that conversation have taken place during that time?
That's the confusing part. At 37, he should have known at this point that has to be renewed in front of a judge periodically, and that he should have known.
That's the part that's hard to understand.
And why he wouldn't have known. Because, I mean, I think part of the family's rationale is that at the time, I think he was turning 18. And so from what I've read, they said their lawyers at the time said really adoption at that point wasn't the option. Conservatorship was the option. So it goes back to whether or not, I guess, whether or not you believe them. But also, I mean, if a lawyer tells you that right now, Larry Sprinkle, are you going to know any different? No. I mean, you know, you're going to go off of what your lawyers tell you. But why wasn't it remedied?
Well, I think there are like two very important factors. One, that there are a whole host of different types of lawyers. If you get an attorney, you have to get somebody that's in a very specialized area. So depending on when they got this attorney, right? If he was all of 17, 18, well, the attorneys that he would have had at that time, if any, which I'm going to assume that he didn't, they would have been the family attorneys, which are going to work in the interest of the Tuohys, not necessarily Michael Oher. But even if, he did have his own representation, well, those attorneys are going to be very different than the attorneys that he has as a football player. Those are going to be focused on sports contracts, promotional contracts, marketing contracts. So that's big thing number one. And then the second thing is that, I'm assuming that when they adopted him, they didn't say, we're going to make this a movie and we're going to make some money off of it. So it's like, depending on how things were addressed as they progressed, that makes this story completely different. And those are the details that we don't know.
And Michael Oher, he wrote a book after The Blind Side, or was it before The Blind Side, called a memoir. I Beat the Odds from Homeless to The Blind Side and Beyond. So it probably was after The Blind Side. 2011 best-selling book. He published that.
The story's amazing. No
it
matter
really
what he
is.
went through. Like, let's not blur the lines here. Like, it's what he overcame, as Larry was mentioning. So I think some of the more impressive stories that we hear in sports are the ones that beat the odds, that kind of overcame the bottom. So regardless of that, and not to make a joke, but one of the comments was The Blind Side 2 blindsided. So sorry that Michael Oher was blindsided by the situation. And if there wasn't a movie, we wouldn't be talking about this right now. But it became such a popular story. Then 2009, think about it, 14 years later, that is crazy that this is rounding back around.
And I think a lot of people now are more familiar with conservatorships and what that is because of Britney Spears. We've all been talking about it with her.
Yeah. Well, at a very base level, no matter what you believe, you obviously have a family here that's broken and struggling and evidently not on very good terms after what seemed to be a Hollywood story, somebody who came from hardly anything and through his own talent and help from the community made something really of himself. But
Hollywood embellishes things so much.
Well, they do everything.
But I mean, that's okay. That's what Hollywood's supposed to do.
But it made it a lot more simplistic. And everything is just incredible. But there's the reality is it's a lot more difficult in his life. Even coming from the circumstance, even with them, it was not easy. But he did do amazing things. I haven't heard too much about him lately. Before now, he's out obviously out of the NFL. Had a great career and went to 2 Super Bowls. Won a lot of earned a lot of money. But who knows what's happened in his life?
Melissa says she's not surprised.
John, though, I mean, is sad and complex, and I think that's the part that I really wish we would hone and focus in more. Is that it is very complex. Before we jump on either side of the debate or the argument, anything that has to do with attorneys, like unless you are a lawyer yourself, and even then, again, in a specialized area, there are so many unknowns that could change the entire trajectory of this story.
And so many people have told this story. If you're talking about Hollywood on one side, the story has come in so many different angles.
And lots of people made lots of money off of it.
Let's talk to Sandra Bullock, see what she says.
Think about $300 million that movie made.
All right, folks, chime in, let us know what you think, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning.